Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1341B, and today's date is July 25th, 2017, and the title of the episode is A Strategic Move by Russia Has Just Been Played? Check. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, it looks like the feud between Trump and Sessions is continuing, and we're seeing that Trump, he is just unleashing a tweet storm, and he's lashing out at the Attorney General. And one of the things he's saying is that the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, he's taken a very weak position on Hillary Clinton crimes and intel leakers. And I have to agree with him. I mean, he should be investigating all these things about the email, about what was going on, and he should also be looking into the leaks and the unmasking and everything, because these things are completely against the law, and there was a crime that was committed. But it looks like he's doing none of this. He should be also looking into the Ukrainian efforts to sabotage the election, because as we know, Clinton was maybe colluding with the Ukrainian government to basically set up Trump. This also should be investigated, because if they're investigating the Russian collusion where there's no evidence, they should do the same with Ukraine. But once again, the deep state doesn't want to do this. The corporate media, once again, is the mouthpiece of the deep state, so we know exactly what is going. He also tweeted about the acting director, Andrew McCabe, who he accused of corruption. And remember, he received $700,000 from Hillary for his wife when his wife was running for office. So we see there's many different things happening here, and at this point, Trump looks like he's just calling out all these individuals. There's also rumors that Tillerson might be quitting. Now, CNN is putting this out, and again, once again, they're pushing this propaganda, trying to make it seem like Trump's administration is in complete chaos. What I think Trump should do at this point, and I think it's now time to do this. Just like he fired Comey, it's time to get rid of Tillerson. It's time to get rid of Sessions. It's time to get rid of all these individuals and bring in the people that he wants. I think when he became president, remember, Republicans, they really don't like him. They're not sticking up for him. Democrats completely hate him. The deep state can't stand him. The intelligence agencies, they don't like him. I think it's time to bring in the people that he wants. Who cares about Republican? Who cares about Democrat? Who cares about the intelligence agencies? Bring in people that are going to work for the people, not for these organizations, not for lobbyists, not for all of these things. Now, if he could do this, this would be something. We see that CIA Director John Brennan and we see Clapper, they're both out there saying, listen, if Trump tries to fire Mueller, well, we should have some type of coup and get rid of Trump. Now, they've been trying to do this, and you can see this is their real intention. Their real intention is trying to get rid of Trump. That's their main focus, and it has been like this for a very long time. We see that the corporate media was out there trying to say that, yes, Trump's looking into pardoning himself. And once again, I think this is complete propaganda. I don't think he's going to pardon himself. And even if he did, it would be a complete disaster on his part. And I think the corporate media was playing that up quite a bit. Maybe they looked into it to see if there was a possibility, but I don't think he would ever do it, because once again, if he fires Mueller, if he fires anyone else, it would look very suspicious at this point. And we can see that Al Greene, who filed the impeachment papers, he's also creating a bill to prevent Trump from pardoning himself. Now remember, a lot of these government idiots, they get their information from the deep state. Now, what I mean by that is they read the corporate media and they believe everything that is being said there. I mean, when you were listening to the Senate panels and they were questioning Comey, they were questioning Sessions, they were reading from the corporate media like this was the absolute truth. I mean, if you listen to Feinstein, she was reading from, the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal. She was reading from these, papers or the New York Times, like, yes, this is the real story, instead of investigating and going past this and looking into this themselves. But once again, we can see many of these individuals are part of the deep state. Now, what's very interesting is that maybe back in April, we talked about microchipping employees. We talked about this Swedish company, Epicenter, that was implanting their people with RFID chips. If we go back even further, we talked about the plan of the deep state, the central bankers, to have everyone chipped. And everyone said, no, this is ridiculous. This is not going to happen. This is one of those conspiracy theories. But yes, when we discussed it back in April, a Swedish company, Epicenter, they did implant their employees with RFID chips. Now, these RFID chips, they're very small. They're like a small piece of rice. And what they do is they implant it right under the skin. It's an electronic device. And you can use it to gain access to doorways. You can use it to pay. You can use it for many different things. It also can be used for tracking. Now, when these employees in the Swedish company receive the RFID chip, they have parties. They congratulate the individual getting it. They say, yes, you're part of the group now, and they're able to go shopping with it. They can use their money with it. They can open doors and have access to certain parts of the company. And we're starting to see that, well, this is starting to spread now. A Wisconsin company, yes, here in the United States, is about to become the first in the U.S. to offer microchip implants to its employees. And of course, they're saying this is the next big thing, and it's going to happen to everyone, and we want to be a part of it. This is coming from Three Square Market Chief Executive Officer Todd Westby. Now, what we're seeing is that these individuals, about 50 of them, have already received the implant, and they are using it. And we can see that, once again, they're saying that this is a fantastic thing. They don't have to use cash. They can use this chip for many other different things. It has all your identification paperwork on there. And they're saying that, yes, this should spread throughout the country, throughout the world. And we have said this before. This is the main goal of the deep state, the central bank. They want everyone chipped. They want to control, track, and they want to make sure that they know exactly what you're doing. And once they do this, guess what? Well, at this point, there's going to be no paper money. There's going to be no papers. You can be turned off or turned on. And what I mean by that is your bank account. They can track all your purchases. Where have you been? Because think about it, they can set up sensors in every part of the city or everywhere you go. And all it has to do is register that you just walked by something without you even knowing it. You can't turn it on. You can't turn it off. They can update the software within the RFID chip automatically to have whatever they want. And of course, they're saying, well, no, it's not going to be used for tracking. It's going to be encrypted. You don't have to worry about it. And of course, you know how well this worked out with cell phones, where they implanted the software without anyone knowing, and they have the ability to track. They have the ability to do whatever they want. The difference now is that it's going to be within you. You really, unless you dig it out, it's always with you, and you cannot really remove it because you will not be able to do anything without it. So they're already making the push to do this. Now, out in Venezuela, we see Maduro. He is racing against time. He wants a new constitution, and we see the deep state. They are pushing very, very hard to try to overthrow this government. And Maduro, he's out there saying that he will have the vote, and it will be held next week in defiance of all the threats from U.S. sanctions and the deep state. And they're going to vote on his ability to basically redraft the country constitution. This way, it will give him more power. He'll be able to fight against the deep state, and it will allow him more power to do this. Now, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? One thing that we do know is that the deep state, they want control of Venezuela. They have a lot of oil. They need it to prop up the system. Remember, the deep state, they haven't given up. Even though they're being dismantled in all different parts, their goal is still to have control of the world. Their goal is still to have regime change. They have not stopped this as of yet. Now, out in the Philippines, there is an individual, Andrei Vitchek. He visited the Philippines to see what was really going on there, and was the corporate media really telling the true story of what has been happening in Marawi. And he went out there and said, well, all these reports coming from the Western media, well, they're not exactly true. He's saying that there's two distinct factions inside the military in the Philippines. One supports the president, and the other one the West still has control over. And they're using it to push their agenda in the Philippines. And he said, my first reaction when he visited the Philippines was one of shock and outrage. He said, what I witnessed was a fundamentally different from what has repeatedly been said by most of the Western mass media outlets. It is evident right from the start that Marawi is not totally destroyed. Of course, the Western media is saying that it's devastating. The entire area is completely destroyed. He says most of it's standing and standing firm. He said, I would estimate that only about 20 to 30% of the houses and buildings, they have sustained heavy damage. But the rest of the area is pretty darn good. And they're saying that there's around 400,000 to 500,000 people that are escaping the area. Well, reports there are saying, no, it's really around 200,000 or so people. And there is no indiscriminate bombing of civilians. That is completely fake, phony, and false. He's saying that all targets are mostly precise. They're aimed at the terrorists only. Mosques and other building houses, they are still standing. And we can see that the people, they are supporting the president. Now, everyone's talking about martial law and how, the government's going to be coming down on the people if they violate the curfew with martial law. But he's saying this is not true once again. With martial law in this area, there's been no brutal consequences if you are outside of the curfew. They just tell you, listen, you shouldn't be outside. Nothing really happens. They only put it into place to make sure that everyone clears the street because there's battles going on within the country. And he's saying that the difference between this martial law and those that were imposed during the reign of Ferdinand Marcos is that now the military is mainly doing real fighting while providing assistance to the civilians. And the people that belong to the Islamic State are not only terrorists, they're also criminals. They're dealing in drugs, they're dealing in human trafficking. And again, this is all part of the West where they're trying to push their agenda in the Philippines. Now, he spoke to a lot of the people within this area, and most of the people say, listen, the West is constantly criticizing about what, the entire situation here, and we see all the news reports coming out, but they haven't sent any help whatsoever. They have sent no assistance whatsoever. All they're doing is criticizing. All the help is coming from the Duterte government. He is sending in supplies for the people. He's helping the people. And the Western countries, they're doing absolutely nothing because this is not part of their agenda. Their agenda is to take control of the Philippines, just like their agenda is to take control of Libya, to take control of Iraq, Syria, Yemen. And if they're trying to take control, they're not going to bring in support for those people. Now, it looks like Trump, at this point, is not sending troops into Afghanistan. McMaster has brought him a plan, and it looks like Trump rejected the plan to send more troops in there. There were talks that, there was going to be a cap of about 3,900 soldiers moving into Afghanistan. And Trump did say something very interesting. Listen, we've been in Afghanistan for 17 years. And he said, I want to find out what we've been doing in Afghanistan for the last 17 years. I think he already understands and already knows what we've been doing in Afghanistan. Protecting the poppy fields, controlling the government, making sure there's an Afghanistan government that is loyal to the deep state, keeping China and Russia in check, controlling the natural resources in Afghanistan. I think we know what's been going on there. Now we see another incident. Yesterday we had a U.S. spy plane that had to take evasive action because a Chinese jet or two Chinese jets flew close to it, but not as close as the F-16s when they flew very close to the Russian defense minister in his jet flying back to Russia. But, of course, the corporate media is blowing this out of proportion. Now we get word that this Iranian vessel And we've seen these Iranian vessels before. They're these little tiny boats. They approached a U.S. Navy patrol ship. The U.S. Navy patrol ship fired warning shots toward the Iranian vessel near the northern Arabian Gulf. Now, of course, the U.S. is very close to the waters of Iran. And they're saying that this little tiny vessel came within 150 yards of the U.S. ship. Now, what's very interesting is they're really worried about this little tiny Iranian tugboat, this little raft, because you've seen them. They're tiny. And they really had to fire shots to ward it off. I mean, this just sounds absolutely ridiculous because the U.S. ship was right outside, and I'm sure they were heading towards the Iranian waters, probably at high speed like they normally do, to provoke something out of Iran to make this an incredible story. And of course, the officials are saying that the Iranian vessel appeared to be from the Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. So, once again, we're seeing provocation. We're seeing the deep state push their agenda in all different areas because they want these countries to do something. And we can see these countries are restraining and they're holding back and saying, you know something, we're not going to do anything because we know what you want us to do and we're not going to do it. We see the Syrian Democratic Forces, they're using armed drones. Where did they get these armed drones? Well, they're saying they captured them from the Islamic State. Where did the Islamic State get them? That's right. The U.S. provided, I should say the deep state provided them with these drones. Now all they're doing is saying, listen, the terrorist groups are done. We're going to hand them off to the Syrian Democratic Forces. We're going to hand them off to the Kurds. We're going to hand them off to the moderate rebels. And this is all they're doing. They're moving the equipment back and forth, pretending that, oh, look, we just got these. Now, the Kurds, they also received drones from the U.S., and these types of systems, well, they're for local reconnaissance. They aid in targeting of the Islamic State fighters, and we can see that they're using some type of drones for their missions. Now, we can see what is happening right now, where the U.S. is pushing their agenda in Syria. We know they set up 8 to 9 secret bases. They're not secret anymore. They're trying to split Syria into two. They want Kurds to have their land. They want Assad to keep his land for right now. And we can see that Russia and Syria, they are still moving and getting rid of these terrorist groups. Right now, the Syrian army, they destroyed the training camp in Deir ez-Zor for the Islamic State. And we can see day after day, things are really starting to fall apart. Now, the U.S. backed Syrian Democratic Forces and the Syrian military, they've made a deal dividing the sphere of influence in the provinces of Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor. The agreement was reached on July 20th and was backed by Russia. Now, according to the agreement, the Syrian Arab Army and pro-government tribal forces will be able to gain areas in the southern and eastern Raqqa countryside and the northwestern Deir ez-Zor countryside without any resistance or anything from the SDF. Now, this will allow government forces backed by the Russian aerospace forces to advance towards Deir ez-Zor from the countryside of Raqqa. Now, Russia just moved their chess piece and just said check to the deep state. And we know what the deep state goal is. And it's been the same goal ever since. Their plans just change a little bit. They want this pipeline built in Syria. They really wanted Syria. They wanted the port in Tartus, but all that completely fell apart. So now they'll take parts of Syria as long as they can run a pipeline through it. And this is why they've joined up with the Kurds. Now, Russia has been using Turkey to keep the Kurds contained. And Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, well, he just did something that is going to blow this whole thing wide open. If we go back in time, we need to remember Russia said, listen, the people will decide Assad's fate. It won't be the deep state. It won't be the neocons. It won't be the UN. It will be the people. And Russia approached the UN. The UN agreed, yes, the people should have a say on who they want as president. There should be elections. And of course, as we know, the deep state, well, they don't want this because they know exactly what the people are going to do. So Sergei Lavrov, he said, listen, we start from the fact that the legitimate aspirations of the Kurds, like other people, need to be fulfilled within the framework of existing international legal norms. This also applies to the decision to hold a referendum. If the Kurds want to be separate and apart, just like Crimea, just like the southeastern people in Ukraine, they should hold a referendum with international observers observing it. And the people of Syria should vote on what they want. And this takes away everything that the coalition, the deep state, wants to do. Because all they want to do is say, this is the Kurds' land. No, this has to be voted on with a referendum of the people of Syria. And they will decide if there's going to be a separate Kurd land, or if all of this is still part of Syria, or maybe it's part of Syria and they have their own little area. But once again, it's not for the deep state, it's not for the neocons, it's not for the UN, it's for the people. Now, the rest of the world, China is going to back this up. Iran is going to back this up. The rest of the world is going to look at this and say, yeah, they do have the right to decide, because we need to remember that this is under the UN. It's the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And this allows people to have a referendum. They have the people. It allows them to decide what they want to do. And it should be left up to the people, not to other governments. So right now, Russia just played a strategic move, and we'll see how this all turns out. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.